Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the globe. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Zach Rubin. I'm a sales manager for Signify in the US, and I'm very excited for everyone to join this webinar with us. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Signify, Signify is the world's leader in lighting. Many of you may recognize us by our previous name, Philips Lighting, which was changed to Signify about 6 years ago. I won't go into all the metrics you see on the screen, but I did just want to quickly show some of the key performance indicators of how we measure Signify's performance, as well as some key metrics that we're really proud of that we feel really defines our company culture. Of course, none of these accomplishments would really be possible without any of you, our customers here in attendance today. So I did just want to take a quick moment and just say thank you. Thank you for believing in us and continuing to use Signify brands for all of your amazing projects. Okay, so now to jump into what really brings us here today, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce all of you to two of the most creative, accomplished designers I've really ever had the opportunity to work with. Renee Joosten of Joosten Studios, and Lionel Ohayon, founder and CEO of iCrave. I'm extremely excited for everyone to hear Renee and Lionel's story today and really see firsthand how their experiences, their journey, their artistic vision enabled and created, in my opinion, one of the world's most jaw-dropping and inspiring installations. So the MSG sphere, for those of you who don't know, is the world's largest spherical structure, standing at about 112 meters high, 157 meters wide. This project took over 4 years to complete at a staggering $2.3 billion price tag, not your average project by any means. To try to put it simply, the sphere is, it's an architectural and technological masterpiece. Working alongside our local representatives in the US, Alios, Electric Lighting Agencies, and Four Wall Entertainment, I was fortunate enough to help support iCrave and our channel partners in using Signify's Color Kinetics brand to help them achieve their extraordinary vision. While it wasn't an easy project by any means, but as expected on a project so complex and such a large-scale installation, I can say without a doubt, it was truly an honor to have been able to work on it, work with Lionel and Renee, and I'm extremely proud of what Signify was able to contribute to this project's success. So, look, without further ado, I will stop talking. I'll hand over the mic to Renee and Lionel, and they can tell us all about their captivating and inspiring journey. Renee?
Thank you, Zach, for that lovely introduction. It's a pleasure to be here and to share our experience. As you said, it was a one-of-a-kind project and many stories and experiences to share. I want to start off, Lionel.
Hi.
Hi. By a quick introduction of the presentation today. We'll be going over quickly well, first of all, there's Lionel. We're presenting, of course, together. We were very much working hand in hand for this project with both the lighting team and the interior teams, which was, this for me is a real good project to show what lighting can do. And how, from a design perspective, this really became one of the most important design tools for this unique project. But let's go over the presentation quickly. We'll be going over the learning objectives, just a quick reminder, the introduction of the sphere, as Zach already went over it a bit. We'll be zooming in on iCrave's scope. As you know, of course, the exterior was brilliant design, but our scope was the interior design, which we, of course, wanted to match in its uniqueness. We'll go over our lighting concept, the strategies for the lighting, And then digging in more to the actual design process, first for the public spaces, and then for the food and beverage areas. And lastly, the Q&A. So quickly, the learning objectives, light as a storyteller will be, as you will hopefully learn from this presentation, we'll be talking about how the quality of light, the layering of light, including the positioning of the light with, in our case, also the actual use of colored light can really tell a story and also change the dynamics of the space. For example, what was unique for us to approach this as more of a theater lighting project that can do double function also as actual functioning light in such a big public space. We'll be going over our choices of materials and how they interacted with light, reflections, how light materials absorb light, and how you can play off those different properties. And then lastly, we want to talk about what made this, one of the things that made this project also unique is a very different skills. We worked with over 80, 90-foot ceilings, but also 8-foot ceilings. And we wanted to make sure as people move through the space, there's a continuity in that experience. Lionel, do you want to talk a bit about it here?
So, hello everyone. My name is Lionel Ohayon. Pleasure being here. I'm going to go a little quickly because we have a lot to show you. But Sphere is a landmark project, not because of us. Really, the client is the brainchild who had a vision, wanted to create the Sphere, and wanted to create this immersive world for a new typology for live entertainment and for shows. And I think that one of the important things to understand about this project is maybe, from a moment in time, both in live entertainment and in the use of light as a primary material for experience, that both of those things are demarcated in this project in a very unique way. And when we were arrived at the project, it was very important for us to understand, like, how does this project sit in its context, and how does this project actually present itself? And it dematerializes on the outside. If you've seen, it's really just a giant screen, and there's a lot of content. As a matter of fact, this month they'll be launching the outdoor sound that will accompany the screen outside. So you'll be able to go up to it, and there's a sound component to the screen, which is another added dimension to it. But really contextualizing this inside of Las Vegas, where there are so many one-of-a-kind projects, everyone's trying to outdo each other, and these icons that sit along this kind of ridiculous main avenue called the Las Vegas Strip. I think that what we really found here was we found that we were trying to place this in kind of like planet Earth, right? Like we quickly understood that this was the largest spherical object ever built by man. And so it became kind of like a driver for us, and how do we place this, and how is it going to sort of present itself when it says hello to the world? And when we start walking through the project, you'll get a sense of like how that became a driving kind of idea about where we kind of present the project, and how the architectural or the emotive response that we were looking for when you enter an arena was driven by this idea of this celestial object, planet Earth as a sphere, the moon, the sphere, and like how do we sort of start to understand it in that, in a world that's ephemeral, where it will continue to change, and every time you approach it, every time you arrive at it, it can be something completely different. So what you're seeing here are kind of like up close. You can look on the right. If we start there, there's a little blow up of a person, just to give you a sense of scale. I can't remember how many million pucks there are on the outside of the screen. And then you sort of like move a little bit closer, you can see the Las Vegas Strip, and then up into its how it presents itself on the street. You want to go next slide? This is the biggest, the world's biggest sphere. There it is, 1.2 million LEDs. They're small 4-inch pucks that cover the exterior of it. The trussels, there's 32 of them. We were there as they were putting them together, are 100 ton each. There's 875,000 square feet of interior space, of which we were responsible for, I think, 470,000 feet, if that's not mistaken. And as Renee mentioned, the spaces are vastly different. There are cavernous spaces that create these large atriums and event spaces, and are very, very kind of compressive moments where you're pressed through very low ceiling spaces and then through vomitoriums and into the main bowl and whatnot. This has a 20,000 person capacity, although they run shows for as few as 2,000 people, and they've already run more than 750 shows since it opened in September, between the movies and the live performances. The 16K LED screen is the world's largest, although it's only 5% the size of the biggest screen that's now being contemplated, which we are currently looking at with another client. And it is the world's largest concert-grade audio system. I think that's a very important piece of this puzzle. There's never really been a purpose-built stadium for 20,000 people that's for live music. And what they did here is, instead of it being like a soccer arena or a hockey arena or something that you also use it for music, this was specifically built for music. There's a new sound system called Beamform Sound, where there's 160,000 speakers, of which there are 8 directed at each seat. And so they can separate all the different parts of the sound. And one of the interesting things about Beamform Sound is that you can direct exactly the sound you want to exactly the right position in 3-dimensional space. So you can have several people watching the same show in different languages. So it's revolutionized even the way that sound is kind of projected, and how they're able to sort of like turn the volume up without bleeding your ears. And it's a very interesting experience if you go there, and allows us to start to think about delivering multi-audio experiences in a singular space, in a controlled environment, which I think is the next evolution of where this thing goes. And I think that the most interesting thing is that we will soon be at 70% energy obtained by solar power. Building up to it, it's a big piece of the story, and I think it's a very nice kind of wrapper for what this project's trying to do.
So iCrave scope, as Lionel mentioned, about 400,000 square feet of interior front of house spaces, which includes the entry bridges, the lobby guest welcome areas, the main concourse, the atrium, and including also 24 food and beverage outlets, 23 VIP clubs and suites, and 8 artist dressing rooms. And to explain it a little bit better, we have plan diagrams to show you per level how the public areas relate to each other. So quickly, you come in on level 1. You have the, 1 second as I grab. So level 1 is where you have the main entries coming in. Level 2 is the bridge to that actually comes from the Venetian. Let's see if I can grab the annotation. Excuse me. Then level 3, you can see how the main atrium is starting to develop. And as you go up through the levels, level 4 and 5, that the main atrium becomes a bit smaller as the bridges turn towards the inside of the atrium. And then level 6 is the whole floor plate again. Instead of, level 5, the RCP of level 5 is the end of, is the height of the atrium. So this is how we approach the project. Lionel mentioned already a bit, but the main idea was, as it is in Vegas, that the experience of the sphere should not just start only at the ball, but basically as you set foot in the atrium, you should already be captured in the experience of the sphere.
I think this is an important point, just real quick. Like we really were, you know, when we were introduced to a project that had a very clear identity for what the immersive opportunity was for being inside the bowl. So imagine inside the sphere, there is a bowl, and the negative space of that bowl, where you're actually sitting underneath this 16K screen, are all these kind of adjunct spaces. And the question is, where does the experience start? So for us, we sort of took this approach that anywhere you enter the spherical, the outside skin of the sphere is actually the proscenium, right? And that's where you actually enter into the experience. And the experience had to start right there, and you were immediately placed on stage. And so this idea that the spectator becomes a spectacle and that you entered into this limitless world became a driver for understanding what does it mean to be in an experience driven by the sphere. So um, the client was predisposed to make that experience something otherworldly, and in doing so understood that it wouldn't be like a regular arena or stadium, which are usually like concrete block painted, you know, fluorescent lights, simple food outlets, that you actually entered into a different world, and that became an important piece of the whole experience of the sphere.
Yeah, and also from as how iCrave approached it, this was one of what we called our lighting projects. So the interior design was mostly focused on the lighting. So the atrium and the sphere itself, the public spaces, they became more of a canvas to make sure that the lighting could indeed perform and transform the space and be adaptive. To talk quickly about the lighting strategies, we spoke about the scale, and what we really wanted to do is that sphere is such a unique, as Zach also mentioned, architectural design, that we really wanted to embrace the architecture and the architectural elements. Like we spoke about already about the trusses that were huge, at the columns, those were really very important items for us. With the layering of the light, we wanted to make sure that we could create this immersive experience. Like I said, the moment you step into the sphere, by layering these soft strokes of light, as we called it, painting with light, that was really our idea, that you would have this atrium where you basically would be using a brush to paint the light on the canvas. The transformation of the space that we also use the colored light to transform it, colored light and white light, and play with light and shadow to really bring out certain elements and reveal them or hide other elements. Very important was also that the lighting would always be an integral part of the architecture. You want to experience the light, but not be kind of bothered with the light with the light itself. With glare, we were very mindful of that, and always integrating it in the lighting into architectural details. Reflections, this is where the interior and lighting team worked very closely together to really create this play of light reflections, to create this surreal kind of otherworldly experience with seemingly endless forms that we just, continue. Lionel, you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So this is a rendering, and I think we should just jump right into what the concept of, even though the project cost $2.3 billion, it's not like we had a limitless budget. The spaces are just enormously vast. We had to be very mindful of how we were going to spend money and how we were going to use architectural details. And really the lighting, and I think Renee alluded it to early on, we quickly came to the understanding that the personality of the sphere would largely be driven by the lighting. And when I say the lighting, I mean, like, how does the lighting speak to you? Not just a static light, not just a kind of a set understanding of how you arrive at it and how it looks, but that it actually has a personality. For example, when you're in the sphere and the show is about to start, there's a call to action. That call to action is like, we want you to come to your seats. And so the sphere has to speak to you somehow and start to think about, what is the tone? Is it funny? Is it dramatic? And does that change? And how do we sort of like build up to the story, the light story, to when you get into your seat and the screen kind of unveils for you. And here you start to see the beginning of that story, which is the idea of holding back colored light. So all the entries have this kind of like monotone white light until you pass a threshold, which we can control, right? And then once you step through there, you step into this next layer of lighting, which is the preamble until you go into the theater and then you're fully immersed. And then the second part that you're seeing here is this idea of this limitlessness, right? The sense of like getting rid of a kind of like a horizon, the sense of like, how do we create this kind of idea of motion and velocity and orbiting, right? And this idea of the spherical object that's like in a planetary system. And that was a big piece for us and for the client. Was the client was very fixated on the mathematics that had to be invented in order for the sphere to be built, in order for the sound to work, in order for the lighting to work. There's a lot of new algorithms and physics that went into building this thing. And so we wanted to create this kind of like sense of arriving into other world, limitless world. And so we introduced this very expensive, but we were able to hold it, very expensive black terrazzo floor, which shows up everywhere. And what it does is it allows us to create all these portals and use a reflection to paint into the floor and to finish the design by using the reflection of the floor to build a kind of like story, the wayfinding. Here you're talking about the wayfinding into the entrance by using these arrows that are sort of pulling you into the portal. Go next slide.
Yeah. And also what we did, we were very mindful of indeed the budget. So we really evaluated what was the, what were the key elements. So one key element for sure was the reflective floor. But we used, for example, the ceilings, as you can see here, they remain open. And we used also the lighting to create this datum. And we've done that throughout the space to really direct your eye away from the unfinished ceiling, and also, of course, direct you into the atrium.
Yeah, I think it's a very important piece to understand. Like at the end of the day, we reduced the project to a reflective floor, a lighting system that has controls enough to be both theatrical and architectural, and these vast white plains of really sheetrock, quite frankly. And so at the end of the day, there was nothing left to reduce. So, we were strategic in how we thought about how we are going to approach it, because we knew that the project kept growing in budget for reasons that had nothing to do with us. It was really technology and whatnot, and power, quite frankly. So we really were like, let's be as reductive as possible to carry an idea and see it through. Just so you know, these pictures are not our photography pictures. These are just pictures during construction while we were there getting ready.
Yeah.
So just they're not the perfect shots, but we wanted to get you as many shots as possible. It's been very complicated to get a professional photographer in there right so far.
And also to kind of share an experience, to share our experience with you. That one thing is to show the final pictures, but we thought it would actually be of interest to show kind of these more kind of in progress pictures. So this is another entrance on level 1. This is when you go into the end of the corridor is the entrance of the bowl. So a very basic corridor that initially our rendering was showing this as our concept to create, again, portals, like a threshold before you actually enter the bowl itself. How we in the end, again, this is a mid-construction picture, but how we in the end we finalized this particular entrance was actually by using a projector fixture, an Agosini fixture, so that actually creates these portals. And that was a good solution, because instead of having now 3 points, 3 electrical points that need to be installed, we were able to reduce that by 2/3. So also a good way to help with the budget. And you can see we were playing with testing with materials. We initially had envisioned this hallway in the rendering with a mid-gray. However, as the project moved very fast, other panels were actually already ordered, as you can see on the right side, which were black perforated metal. And that's actually what you see in the picture. So it was not, you know, obviously as effective as the mid-gray, but it still worked.
This was a, you know, one of the things about Sphere, you could see in the top left, there's an arrow showing, there's a long bridge, if anyone's been there, but there's a long bridge that comes from the Sands Convention Center. And so that's the part of the deal of where this was located was doing a deal with Sands Casino and getting people to walk through their facility into the Sphere as an extension of the convention center, and also just so people would go to the Venetian casino and they would connect the two and drive traffic through it. But there was a big question halfway through the project as to whether or not, you know, where are people going to come through? Like, what percentage of people are going to come through the bridge? What percentage of people are going to take an Uber? Who's going to walk and whatnot? And that became a big driver in understanding where we're going to spend money and how these spaces were going to be. What's interesting about the space you're looking at right now, this is the open mouth of the bridge. You kind of see it as it attaches to the Sphere in the upper left. And it's an amazingly large space. In and of itself, it's a marketable space for events. And the Sphere will be successful because the public spaces that we're talking about that we worked on that are not inside the bowl where U2 plays are 400 and some odd thousand square feet of convention space, meeting space, event space, concert space, all sorts of different functions that it's being rented for and used for. And so all these spaces are actually not just about people getting in and out of a show, they're also been programmed to be used for events. And what you're looking at here, you can see number 4. We were working on how are we going to announce that you've arrived after you've walked down this long bridge and you've arrived. And we wanted the threshold of the Sphere, which you'll see in the next slide, I believe, to be a very clear thing, that you knew you were stepping through the edge of the Sphere and now you've arrived into this other place. And so these were the magnetrons that you have to walk through, you know, the metal detectors. And what we wanted is to create this kind of like this band before the threshold so that people would wait at the band and then you get called. So you didn't feel like you were arriving at a line like at an airport, right? So we're like, how do we pull that back and use a kind of a lighting moment to pull the whole thing back, then allow people to sort of in a controlled way be called 2 at a time, 5 at a time, whatever it is, to go through that threshold, not feel like it was the TSA waiting to get through. And so here, what you really have is this kind of like portal moment coming into the Sphere. In the end, those magnetrons were not built. They were concerned about how they would work for emergency exit, where they create a clogging effect into the space. But we'll show you the next picture and see how similar this has been. And you can see how on the left, what you're seeing is what looks like wings, is really there's a slit in the hallway in the glass, and beyond it is the exterior of the Sphere. So you're seeing the exterior of the Sphere reflected into the ground, and you're seeing this lit portal that's pulling people in down the hallway into the front. And yeah, so it's again another opportunity for us to set the tone, to create the kind of like anticipation for people to arrive, set the color, depending, you know, it could be a kid's show for trolls or whatever it's going to happen. We're able to reimagine what the whole space looks and feels like for people arriving into the Sphere.
Yeah, and that's also why these layers of light also play into that. So we always have a layer of, again, the ceiling is open except for the spines gesture, which has track, very, of course, flexible, also to be changing if the function changes on this of the use of the space. This is some of the mock-ups that we did. One of the things with such reflective floors, and we'll see that later on, and the very specific sidelines as everything is curved in Sphere, is working out the details. So you would never see the light source still have light output, but of course it also still needs to be big enough.
I think that's a super important point, and to Renee and the team's credit, like the Sphere there's no right angles in the Sphere. We made sure that everything kind of like sweeps into a curve, and the bridges don't follow each other. They're kind of like offset on different levels. So you're above the light and you're below the light. And so the complexity to make sure that you never saw the source was immense. It's just actually, to me, the most remarkable thing is that you just don't ever really look into, you know, a row of like color kinetics blasting you in your eyes.
So this is one of the compressed spaces. So this is, as you see at the top left, you just pass the bridge. Now you're in this really 8-foot compressed space where before you actually access the atrium. Very important to us, just quickly walking through it. Number one is we delineate the sphere itself with lighting. That's really the parameter of the sphere. The coves, as you will see, we wanted to embrace these columns. We love the columns in sphere. And as you will see in the detail later on, it's again a curved detail to, you know, making as if the columns continue endlessly. The number 3 is the theatrical fixture that's actually recessed, which was a challenge on its own, because we still wanted this to be hidden as much as possible. On the right side, we have these portals, or almost like paint brushes of light as you move on through the space. Here you can see a bit of a closer up of the detail of how the column actually intersects with the ceiling. The picture on the left side is pre-aiming, but it is to show you how we build the different layers of light with the cove light for a soft glow at the top, and then with the theater lights that still need to be aimed in this picture to kind of continue that soft glow of light.
Yeah, just a couple things. If you go back to that slide, or you can stay here, it's fine. You know, you can see in the left the baseboard's black, right? And the black baseboard kills our effect, right? And we were really trying to build these portals and continue to have the sense of moving through thresholds, coming through portals, expanding space. Here you're moving from a 10-foot ceiling as you enter the sphere, you pass through those portals, and all of a sudden you're in a 95, 100-foot tall space, right? So we're continuing to like accentuate this kind of sense of like light that exists above you but is limitless, or creating these kind of like step through portals, creating opportunities for Instagram moments. And you're going to see, we're going to talk about math graphics in a little bit. And here you start to see like how we're able to, like, you're right at the edge, you've passed that portal, it's painted pink on the left, it's painted blue on the right, and you're looking up, and you can see you can't really make out any of the indirect lighting on these various layers, but we have complete control over the animation and the color of the space, even in the broad daylight. And again, like the ability to sort of like really create a dynamic world, which really, this is really, like I said, this is 3 elements. This is lighting, controllable lighting that we're able to manipulate and tell a story with. The floor, so we're able to actually create that kind of sense of like walking through a limitless world. And then just this kind of like moon surface, right? The matte white that's able to accept the lighting.
Or canvas. Yeah, and also to strategically use the lighting, for example, on the left side where you see that the cove kind of sets this portal element free from the ceiling. The atrium, Lionel.
Yep. So this is a very early rendering, which stuck with us the whole way. And again, back to what we keep saying over and over again. How do we use the lighting to create the animation space? How many kind of looks can we have so that they can continually manipulate it and, you know, set them off with 10 or 12 settings. And then every time there's a show, we're in there and we're programming lighting for something different. And so on number 10 is a scrim. Behind it are 2 massive galleries. Number 11 is the main bar for the space. The escalator has become a central element, these big, beautiful double-story escalators that cross each other. And then I believe it's number 2 or 3 there, is the ring. This kind of like idea that from the ceiling we can paint rooms, we can create physical spaces by having these beams that allow us to sort of like create like a pattern on the floor and create actual volumes of space just using light. And then the downlights and the columns. The columns themselves are a system. We have, Renee is going to speak about it. We went to great lengths to create custom custom lighting that would actually capture and only the light on the columns and not have the spill around it. And over the kind of spans we have, it was tremendously difficult, but really, really successful. Go next slide. And here you kind of get a feel. Here we largely, in the settings when we open the sphere, we largely did not use the column system. It's interesting because we were also excited when we finally lit it, because these rings that were an installation, art installation when we opened, required us to remove some of our lights that were hitting that were aimed towards the columns in order to allow these rings to sort of be hung. And so you see that that system has not been really lit, although the rings are lit. But we're taking these rings down in the coming months, and we're going to use that system as well. But here you see the kind of like ability to completely manipulate the kind of mood of the room. And I think that that's, to me, one of the greatest pieces of like what we learned, we believe to be true. It's in our renderings, but when we actually saw it, I actually think it's better than it is in the renderings.
Yeah, and here we dive into a bit of the rendering as we broke out the different elements. We wanted to zoom in on these key features. So one of the key features were all the bridges that is, they're connecting the different floor plates on the north and the south side. What we really looked at is first in plan to make sure, do what kind of length of fixtures, for example, we can use here. And because of the scale of this project, we actually discovered we can actually use 4-footers for most of the length, which also helped with the budget. And then we also looked at the controllability, as you can see on the top right. We explored if we really needed to go with 1-foot controls, it all adds up in the price because you need more DMX channels, or if we could actually get a desirable effect by using 4-foot fixtures. And the conclusion was that we could actually use 4-foot fixtures, which was, as you will see later on as well. So we also have these fixtures. Were color kinetics. We use these fixtures because they were not only very good in saturated colored light, but also with white light. And that was very important to us, that the pictures you will see now are mostly colorful, but in reality, the white light setting is also really quite nice and very important to be so the space indeed can be adaptable to any event they may have. You have the hero wall on the right side of the screen. You can see it also in the left on the image. The escalators, as Lionel mentioned, another really key component, also helping people be guided through the space. The detail that we did, you'll see it later on, was a combination of a glow for the bottom of the escalators, but also integrating monopoints to make sure we also had enough light to meet the requirements for the escalators. This was a fun mock-up, 25 feet, as you can see on the image with the rendering, how small actually 25 feet is in the atrium. What we were looking for is how to grace this scrim. The scrim was behind it starts at the 2nd floor. It's behind the main bar, and it goes all the way up to the 7th floor, where also the galleries are behind. So it's really, we wanted to explore how can this be, as in a theater, really act as something that can reveal or actually hide what goes on at the galleries.
I think this is a great example of like what we mean by, the space is so big. You could see how tall that is. I don't know if it's 120 feet or something like that. And this is just an aircraft cable lenticular kind of screen, right? 3-dimensional X's, rows of 9 and X's. So as you're coming up the escalator, you can create this kind of lenticular effect by lighting the front of it, almost like a shark's tooth scrim, where you light the front of it or you light the back, and then you either light those galleries or you don't. But as you move across them, because you're always on the escalators moving across them, you get this kind of like this lenticular kind of view into the space or hiding the space. And just that, like we reduced this to just aircraft cable, and the steel and the cable and the labor to put it together was a extraordinarily big number. And quite frankly, became a beautiful piece of sculpture when it was hit with light. And we have moving heads that can create animation on it when we're getting a show started and whatnot. But when you're at the scale, to think about how, you know, just a sheetrock wall that tall, if we were going to go that way, had a value to it, right? So we were able to set a baseline, go, well, if you're going to build sheetrock over 120 feet of this, you know, 90 feet wide or whatever it was, sheetrock on both sides of tape it and paint it, you're already at this number. So how can we kind of get something that might be more, but the net difference isn't that much more, but the effect that you can get is dramatically different.
Then one of the other challenges that we had is, you can see here on the bottom left, the RCP. It's actually more of a floor plan looking down on the 5th floor. And you will see how the different bridges that connect the north side to the south side, how it steps in towards the main atrium, and how that impacted us on how to realize uniform lighting throughout the space. So we used the 5th floor RCP. You see the top left picture. It was an open ceiling with blades, and how we used that ceiling to light the floor of level 2, but also the bridges on 4, 3, and 5. So what we really wanted to do with the light is to make sure that the general lighting would not interfere with the lighting of the bridges, for example. It really needed to be contained. And we spoke about the columns before. There were actually quite a few different typologies of columns, depending on where they were located within the atrium. Columns A, you've already seen. And then we had B, C, and 2 versions of E, depending on which side of the atrium they were located. And what was challenging about them is that each column had different architectural parameters. So you can see with column C, it was very close to a bridge, while with column E1 and E2, they were very close to the escalator. So each time we had to really find the best location to light these columns and to light them equally throughout the different column topologies. And how we approached it is by using 3 layers of lights. We had the number 1, which was the coves that you can actually see in the pictures as well. But of course, a cove, it's a grazing cove, but even then the light would not travel as far. It was mostly to make sure that the top would not go dark, because layer number 2 and 3 were theater lighting fixtures that were aimed towards the column with shutters and lenses to really project the light on the column, elongate it so that we could have an even effect between layer 1, 2, and 3, and that we could get down to the column, to the floor, as much as we could. And you can see here we did a lot of AGI calculations. Rosa from our team worked very hard on this. And we did a lot of mock-ups on site to give you a glimpse also on what the scale is. The programming, you can see the picture on the right side, how indeed the layers of light were working. And then we worked also with the manufacturer to make sure that in the different, we had, like I said, a lot of different columns lit with, either from the 5th floor ceiling or from different, also sometimes from the finished ceiling. So they created this custom mounting for us to really still have the adjustability we needed, but also have it as hidden as possible. It actually has a cover plate, so we could still stay true to our concept. This was more mock-ups that we actually did in our office. This is the floor that you actually see rotated upside down. But this was studying that initially we had hoped to get a very big pocket for the cove. In the end, we had much less space, so we had to revise it. And these were studies to see how can we actually get the most light out of it with the limited dimensions. A quick view of the 5th floor RCP. Here you can see that within the blades, all the lights that we were using in this 5th floor RCP to get all the functionality in that we needed to do for the columns, general lighting, cove lighting, the beam shapers are in here. So it became a very busy ceiling that was very well coordinated.
Okay, so again, like about here, what is it to enter into the sphere? What kind of a vessel is this thing, and what kind of a, when you enter your vessel, like these doors go into the suites, what does it look like? What does it feel like? So this hallway was like a kind of an imaginary kind of like bridge to your vessel that takes you into this other world. And the math graphics you're seeing right there are exemplified all over the project. I think we got some images to show you, but we actually, you know, you can see in this image here, this is during construction. You can see the math graphics on the side there. You start to see like how this sort of played into the exact same hallway, and how the renderings really were drivers, and that we really used those renderings to paint when we were in the space and get the answers we were looking for. I can't stress enough how much they acted like a digital twin for us, and how much we were able to really. I remember when we first showed rendering, somebody from MSG said, "Don't overpromise. Make sure you don't overpromise in your renderings, right? Especially with the columns, right? Because we had these long 110-foot throws and no light spilling anywhere, and I think that that's kind of like more of the same, really using the floor, really creating these portals and a sense of anticipation, not really seeing where you're going as the sort of hallway curves, and building that anticipation."
So level 6 is, you see the escalators continue. We have the escalator, you can see it a little bit how it was providing both the soft glow, but also the directional light needed to be on the escalators. Here the 6th and the 7th floor were, we were a little bit more restrained in the sense of that we wanted to make sure that our money went to the atrium. But this floor, we were able to get the layers of light that we still wanted. We have the track lighting again, the linear lights that are color changing RGBW, but we also got the custom pendants. And here you can see them mid-construction. These were, as you can see, it's basically the sphere structure that we used as inspiration for this pendant. Moving up to the last floor, the 7th floor, again, very low ceilings. This was very basic. We kept to our main design items, which was following the kind of the radial pattern of the sphere, creating a datum with the lighting to make sure that your eye basically stops at the lighting, and a cove just to create a threshold before you enter to the bowl. We have a quick few pictures to show you what it looked like in construction and pre-programming. And here we have some gathered pictures to show you display of light and reflections, that even the aura got immersed into our lighting reflections of the architecture. And as Lionel mentioned, our punch list item, a big no-no with the black baseboard. The math wallpaper, very important. We did a lot of studies to make sure that it would capture the light what the properties of the wallpaper needed to be. On the right, the mock-up for the underside of the escalator. This was very important to us that the finish, this is one of the finishes that was actually not as reflective. We found a compromise because we really wanted to make sure that the light source would not be reflected, especially with those view angles. And we also, very importantly, had a control strategy thought out. So the main thing, just to quickly summarize it, is that we use the color changing downlights more as the static lights, and only more of the special elements that would be chasing, also to kind of find a balance, you know, for the experience as you walk through the space, that not everything is moving and changing at the right time. I'm just going to go through this a bit faster. You can see the different elements, the portal lighting, that did have a chase. We used LED panels, 12-inch, and we basically controlled them per band of 12 inches high. You can see here the scrim wall with the color changing, and the beam shapers also creating the patterns. The drink rails or the bridges, those are indeed the chase lighting with the 4-foot fixtures we mentioned before, which was used throughout. And then you have the columns. I'm just going to go quickly through this one. Here I want to mention what you see in the top left picture is the bar halo. This was very important to us, that while you have these different F&B spaces that face the atrium, that those are kind of this portal light that still communicates with the atrium. So those are color changing lights, RGBW, while the lights typically in the actual F&B spaces is a warm white 24K. And this is Lionel, you want to talk about this diagram? Because this is good.
Yeah, sure. So this was, you know, we had to figure out how to describe, we were talking earlier about the personality of the lighting, and, you know, if you go to see a show at the Sphere, your ticket will say, you know, 7 o'clock and the show starts at 8:15. And the reason is because they want you to go to the Sphere experience, which you saw the Aura robot, and there's all sorts of different things that people do. And so how do we animate the Sphere outside the bowl, and how does it speak to you? What is the call to action? And so here you're looking at a program that we're setting with a color kind of a color inputs and animation that speak about when people start entering for the first 27 minutes. Then there's a 15 minutes till the show starts acting a different way, and so on and so on through the show starting. You can see it's getting a little bit more animated with the color, the kind of like lit lights is starting to like activate and tell you, you know, like head for your seat kind of thing. And then during the show, it has a different appearance. This one was programmed for Postcards from Earth, the Darren Aronofsky movie. And so it really responds to the tone. We worked with the director on the tonality of it, and sort of like how it is if you stepped out of the movie into the atrium, what would it be like? And then after the show, it sort of runs another sequence as people are leaving, and then flips back to people coming back in. And so for every show, really, right now, the Grateful Dead, and for U2, we're constantly working with them to add more content and add more kind of sequences that make sense for what they're trying to do.
Indeed, these fixtures were 4-foot, controlled per 4-foot. For some of the other fixtures, like the spines, we had them controlled per foot. I'm sorry, per spine. For example, with the bridges. So here you see a plan diagram showing both the public spaces and the food and beverage. This one is at level 1. It's the arc bar. I'll just quickly go over it. You can see how this is the rendering with creating a datum of lights. What is fun is that there's actually the columns are also wrapped in mirror, and that really creates this other kind of illusion of where the light ends and where it begins. And also for this, as the floor was very reflective, we were very careful with the detailing of the bar die lighting, using also a fixture that had a frosting on it, and so you would never see any of the diodes, nor in direct view, but also not in the reflected view. The main bar, this is level 2. As you can see, this is really the bar when you enter the atrium for the first time. This was, of course, the main focus of the space. We created these custom fixtures that were lines of light that actually went up to the scrim wall with these custom fixtures that would also capture your eye. And as you may remember from the 6th level, we had a similar fixture like this, but this is the smaller version of that decorative fixture. And here you can see that the lines go up to the scrim, and that really helps to, when you walk into the space, to find your way to the bar easily. The radius bar, Lionel, if you want to say a few things while I keep clicking.
I think what's really interesting to me about these, if you look at them, is, again, like how we use the digital model to really drive our solutions and work with the construction group to actually make that our Bible of where we were going was key piece to the puzzle. But this kind of like idea that you always are, they're kind of like this vast, limitless world, and then you have these oases that are framed by light, and you're always pulled towards them. And what was interesting about this project is that every one of these outlets is a different food. They have a different name, they have different food offerings. Here you have another one of these bars. You can see the math graphics playing in very, very prominently. And each one of them kind of like serves to sort of draw you into a world and gather people somewhere where they can, like, be in a sort of a collective area, talk about the show, be social. And one of the things that we were really looking for is, what is a night out at the Sphere? And here, every one of these food outlets has an actual kitchen behind it, so you're eating real food. And
also, just to mention, this was also in what was very important for the food and beverage areas, that we also had table lamps, fixed table lamps, which was unique that we could do it in a public space like this. And also here in the ceiling, we actually have a custom fixture. A few quick pictures just to show you more about our math, how that was a returning theme, the custom details, the continuation of the lines. As you see here with the 3D bar die, we really created a play of light and shadow. And the reflections, this is by reflected light, how the math on the top of the ceiling of the main bar was lit. And one of my favorite things was with the radius bar, is that we had these brass rods that creating a rhythm of a wave, and then we had very thin juniper light fixtures, also with brass, that were placed in between, creating this kind of moire effect as you were passing by. And then lastly, I couldn't resist a punch list item, because to show you the challenges of the reflective floors, anything that wasn't installed correctly would be actually revealed.